Karol Markowicz is a fantastic columnist for the New York Post. Now, she moved her family from New York to Florida this past year, she says, to protect her kids from feckless New York politicians who were wrecking their childhood. This week, I thought you'd like that. Well, this week she writes that as COVID restrictions all around the country and Democrat politicians pretend that the science has changed, Americans need to demand apologies for 2 years of policies that upended all of our lives. I think we would agree with that, and that's why we welcome to the show Karol Markowicz. Thank you, Karol.
Thank you.
It's fascinating. So many people are bugging out of New York. They've lost congressional seats because of it.
Right. You know, it was a big story that our family left because I had always been, I kind of jokingly called myself a New York supremacist. I thought New York was the greatest city ever. I was raised in Brooklyn. My husband was raised in Queens. We were going to stay there forever and retire to Manhattan. We had a whole plan. And the fact that we pulled the plug on that plan said something very bad about where New York was heading. Because if they lost us, that means they could lose anybody. And it was really sad.
What was the turning point for you? What was that? Just, this is it. That no more. We're out of here.
I couldn't see a path to sanity. We had been in this COVID restriction mania for so long, and I just saw that New Yorkers had not a lot of interest in getting out of it. So what I always say about it is, yes, the politicians were terrible, and absolutely they played a large role in pushing us out. But really, my fellow New Yorkers were where I was disappointed. I thought that when private schools opened but public schools didn't, I thought, well, this is it. This is when they're gonna march in the streets. And nobody marched in the streets. There was no outcry last year. And then when states across the country went maskless and New York stayed masked for kids, I thought, well, they're gonna see that, you know, kids aren't dying in the streets in Florida and other states that don't have masks, and they're gonna say, well, our kids should be maskless too. But that never happened. And I always thought of New Yorkers as being able to see all the angles and being able to see through everything. And this was a moment where I could tell that they just couldn't get there. They couldn't see through what was going on. They couldn't get to the truth of what was happening. And it was really disappointing.
When you went to Florida and your family relocated, what was very different and very obvious?
So the very obvious was that my kids went to school without masks, and that was it. They just, day one, showed up with no masks. It wasn't a big deal, and they just moved on with their lives like that. But little things that weren't obvious to me that had been lost in New York, like circle time in kindergarten. They don't have that in New York City right now because you're not allowed to interact with other kids. Book fairs. Parents are not allowed to come into school buildings and take the kids to a book fair.
At all?
No, there's no activities in schools, for parents, or in our case in Florida, my mother-in-law was visiting. She took my kids to their book fair at their school. I don't know what year that's gonna happen in New York, 2030? I mean, I literally can't imagine when the city gets back to that kind of normalcy.
There was a sense of kind of hope that maybe the new mayor, Eric Adams, would make some big changes, because de Blasio, in my mind, was nuts. Stark raving nuts. But it doesn't seem that Adams has made big changes. Do you think he will?
I also had a lot of hope for Mayor Adams. He is, so finally schools in New York City moved away from masking. About a month ago, they unmasked outside. And when I tell people outside New York that they were wearing masks outside, it's just like, what? But now they've also allowed mask optional inside schools, except for 2-, 3-, and 4-year-olds, because there is no vaccine for them. And that's just insane. No other country is even masking 2-, 3-, and 4-year-olds. But he says he's following the science. There's no science to suggest that that's necessary. Yeah, a lot of faith already has been lost in him. And I root for New York. I want it to come back. I won't be back, but I want New York to succeed. And Mayor Adams is already on a wrong path.
You're going to release a book later this year, and you're going to talk about the impact of wokeism on children. We'd love to have you back when the book comes out. Tell everybody about it, but give us a preview. Tell us what it's going to be.
So the preview is that wokeness is destroying childhood in a variety of ways. We now kind of see it in schools, but it's not just schools. It's happening throughout just all manner of society, in book publishing, in health organizations. I mean, obviously in the way we handled COVID, And what I mean by that is, you know, I laughed when you and Tony were saying that you like liberals. I just wanted to be like, oh, Tony Perkins says he likes liberals and Governor Huckabee agrees. But that's really it. You know, liberalism or leftism even isn't new. But what's new is the shutting down of opinion. This wokeness, it doesn't let you say anything that's not specifically allowed. And so what happened with COVID, for example, is that anybody who spoke out at all against the approved narrative was immediately shut down in every way. They might even have their lives destroyed. And I mean, parents were afraid to speak out and say, I want my kid's school to open. They were afraid someone would call their job and say, you know, this person wants teachers to die. And there was a famous story a few days ago where a Levi's executive, Jennifer Say, actually quit, was pushed out because she wanted schools to open, the most sane, rational thing in the whole world, to want her kids to go to school, and she wasn't allowed to keep her job because of it.
I saw it. It was an amazing interview, and she was a classic liberal.
Exactly.
But again, the kind that I love to hang around with because I get traction from people that I disagree with, but they're sane and they're reasonable. Karol, we're looking forward to having you back when the book comes out, and I know it's going to be a very significant work that we will all look forward to seeing. Now, for our audience, if you'd like to keep up with Karol's latest columns at the New York Post, go to Huckabee.tv. We'll connect you. You'll get more information on Karol and the columns that she's doing for the Post.